Hey gang, Mark Sweeney here from Austin, Texas at beautiful Austin Dental Spa. If you've tuned into these Wisdom Wednesdays before, you know the deal. We do a little report on usually scientific data related to dentistry. This week, like a lot of other weeks, it's related to just your overall health and well-being. We have a motto or a theme every month, and this month it has been Heartfelt February because of Valentine's Day and all the heart-related things that happen in the month of February, and this will be our last episode for this month. So next Wednesday I'll be introducing you to the newest version of March theme. So let's finish off February with a big note. You've heard the expression, eat your heart out, but have you heard that there possibly is some new research straight out of Boston in Harvard University School of Public Health, just was released in December, and it's actually talking about how you might be able to eat yourself to a healthy heart. So a little different than eat your heart out, but eat your heart healthy, I guess, would be more appropriate. So we're going to get into that, and then, of course, I always end with a health tip. If you've tuned in before, you know the routine. If this is your first Wisdom Wednesday, welcome, and thanks for joining us. We do this every Wednesday right about this time, and I hope you'll enjoy the information you're going to get, because this is one of those universal themes that applies to all of us. Some of the studies I usually call into question because they didn't have very many participants. This week, completely other end of the spectrum. There were over 200,000 participants in this study, and it went for over 30 years. So anytime you get a study like that, it gets my attention. So this one's legit stuff. And it's about a topic that a lot of people are talking about these days, plant-based versus animal-based protein. There's been a lot of confusing and misinformation out there. I hate to use that word. It's getting thrown around so much in Washington, D.C. right now with misinformation and both sides accusing the other of that. But in this case, there is a lot in the nutrition world, a lot of misinformation. And there's lots of people out there on the carnivore diet. It continues to grow legs and just keep on staying in the news cycle. This might help you make decisions about some of these things. So again, I said this study, we'll get to the actual numbers, but like I said, it was Harvard School of Public Health. They studied two things, cardiovascular disease and coronary heart disease. Those are related, both have to do with your cardiovascular system, but cardiovascular disease usually means it ends in a stroke, which is an event in your brain. Either you get a blood clot that shuts down the blood flow, or you get an ischemic stroke where an artery ruptures and bleeds into the brain space. Both potentially fatal, especially the ischemic strokes. And then, of course, coronary heart disease, or CHD, is a heart attack. So these were reported just last month in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. So this is a peer-reviewed study. The researchers observed that a combination of consuming plant protein and higher protein intake overall, whether plant or animal, provided the most heart health benefits, but reducing the animal protein, particularly the animal protein from red meats, which we've all heard contrasting views over the years about red meat being potentially negative health-wise. So we're going to get into that. The average American, according to this study, eats a ratio from plant to animal of 1 to 3 in that ratio comparatively. That's the average American. Now, this study found that people that ate a ratio of 1 to 2, so a little less animal protein and a little more plant protein, just a 1 to 2 ratio, which is not that much different than 1 to 3, but that it made a significant difference in their cardiovascular disease rates in a ratio that was even lower of 1 to 1.3, which is nearly equal in between plant and animal protein, actually even correlated to an even lower incidence of coronary heart disease. So again, I said earlier, the researchers used 30 years of data on diet, lifestyle, and heart health from 203,000 men and women. So that's another difference. A lot of studies only use women or only use men or have a much lower number of people involved in the study. 203,000 people is a lot. And these men and women were all nursing students at one point in time, and so they did this 30-year study where they checked in with each of these participants every 4 years and had them fill out a questionnaire on diet, lifestyle, health choices every 4 years for 30 years. So that's a pretty significant study, and they measured the protein ingestion in grams per day. So over the course of this study, out of 203,000, 16,000 people had coronary events, either a stroke or a heart attack. 10,000 had coronary heart disease. 10,000 out of 203,000 had a heart attack or some kind of heart event, and 6,000 had strokes out of 200,000 again. So when they looked at these people that had these coronary events, they compared people who had the lowest plant to animal protein ratio and found that they had a 19% lower risk of cardiovascular disease, which would lead to a stroke, and a 27% lower incidence of heart disease. So that's significant numbers, 20% and 27%, just by reducing the ratio between plant and animal proteins. And they found that the people who had more protein intake overall, whether plant or animal, and had that low ratio between the two, had 28% lower risk of cardiovascular disease and a whopping 36% lower risk of coronary heart disease. So that's 36%, almost 40% compared to those who had the lowest protein intake. So that's a significant event. They also found that around 1 to 2 ratio between plant to animal, that it kind of leveled off, but it did, if you lowered it closer to 1.1, it continued to show benefits on these people. And again, this is 200,000 people. So you might want to consider upping your plant protein intake. And I figured some of you out there are going, well, what's the difference? We know about animal proteins, meat, chicken, fish. Those would be considered proteins from animals, bacon. But what about plant proteins? They're not as well known off the top of people's heads, but I'm going to help you out with that with my health tip of the week to help you boost your plant proteins. Now, you can get plant proteins in a powder form and just dump them in a smoothie or a glass of milk or something. Milk would be as an example of animal protein, the little bit of protein that milk has in it. But if you dump some of this plant protein in, now you're raising your plant protein. But that's not as fun of a way to do it as actually eating the plants that have high protein. The two most common ones are nuts and legumes. Legumes are the leafy green vegetables, like kale. That's why kale gets such a big deal. Lettuce. Legumes are the leafy things. Beans, chickpeas, green peas, edamame. You go to some of the sushi places in town, love the edamame. Lentils, which are a form of beans, and among other examples. Those are some of the best known sources. But I'm going to help you out even further with my health tips. Oatmeal. It's first thing in the morning. What a great thing. Oats have 26 grams of protein in a normal serving, 1 cup of oatmeal. Quinoa, you see that on restaurants all over town as a substitute for rice. It's actually, it's a seed instead of rice, but it gets substituted for rice in many dishes around Austin, and that has a great volume of protein in it, and it's very healthy. Broccoli. Now, George Bush Sr. came out publicly while he was president saying he didn't like broccoli. I love broccoli. If you do, broccoli and broccolini, great sources of plant protein. Potatoes, an average large potato has 7 grams of protein. That's pretty darn good. Now, it has the starch in it too. And then one of my all-time favorites, avocados. Avocados have a lot of health benefits, but a typical avocado has 4 grams of protein. So next time you're at a Mexican restaurant, go ahead and order that guacamole. That's my health tip for the week. Increase your plant protein intake so that you reduce that ratio between plant and animal, and see if you can get some increased health benefits to your heart and your brain. That's it for Wisdom Wednesday. I'll see you in March, next Wednesday, for our first version of March's Wisdom Wednesday. Have a great week.